Hello again and welcome to another 140k Imperial Guard Tactics video, and today guys I've got something really exciting for you. We're going to be going through the new ASTRA MILITARUM, Imperial Guard, of course, secondary objectives from Warzone Nephilim. Now I know what some of you are going to be saying, Mordian Glory, this picture isn't big enough, we can't see it. Well, don't worry. Firstly, this is from the Games Workshop website, so blame them, not me, get off my case guys. But secondly, don't worry because I've got you covered. These are going to be written down in the description below, so you'll be able to see them better there. This is just a picture from the Games Workshop Warhammer community website, so you can see that it's legit. Anyway, without further ado, let's crack on with today's video. Now, the first of the secondary objectives that we've seen is by LASGUN and BAYONET, and this is a Purge the Enemy secondary objective, and it's a progressive objective, so you score it as the game goes on. And it's quite simple. You score 1 victory point each time an enemy unit that starts the turn within range of an objective is destroyed by an ASTRA MILITARUM unit of your army. Now, personally, I don't like this one. I think this is probably one of the weakest ones of the bunch, and the reason for that is twofold. Firstly, it's basically a nerfed version of For the Emperor, which is what we had from the last update. Which used to be just kill something and you got a point for it. Now it's like, okay, you get a point for it, and yeah, you can do it in shooting and in combat, but they have to be near an enemy objective. And it's like, well, that's not great, because this relies upon the fact that my opponent can then kind of screw me over on this. Yeah, of course, there's going to be those times when your opponent's going to be out on an objective and you can kill a unit, and that's great. And maybe if you're facing like horde units or multiple small units of like just marines or like intercessors or stuff like that, then this would be a good one for that. But the problem I see here is that objective holders kind of fall into two categories. First one is the ones that are small and hidden out of line of sight. Well, these units can be easier to kill. Because they're hidden out of line of sight, we often can't bring to bear some of our greatest firepower. Yeah, we've got plenty of artillery like basilisks and manticores and that kind of stuff. So maybe we'll be able to pick up a victory point or two from this. But the point is that the other kind of objective holder you tend to find are really drawable ones. Things like big units like paladins or terminators, stuff that people know that are tough so that they can go out in the open and hold those midfield objectives. The fact you only get 1 victory point each time that you destroy one of the units is really bad. Even if you pick up a couple of enemy units that are holding a backfield objective, that's only 2 victory points. And let me tell you, as someone who's been running his manticores recently, well, for a long time, but even more so recently, they can sometimes take a whole game to pick up an enemy unit off the backfield objective, especially if it's a marine one in cover with armor of contempt and all this stuff. Sometimes it's not easy to pick those backfield objective holders up. And so this is not a good objective. This is not a good secondary, guys. So this is what I would say is the weakest one, because either you're trying to take off really difficult units, or you take off units you can't bring all your firepower to bear against. Now, the next objective that we're going to be taking a look at is Special Orders, and this is a Shadow Operations one, and it's an end game objective, and it's quite interesting. So it's an action, and the action is Expunge Intel. 1 ASTRA MILITARUM infantry unit from your army can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase if it was in 12 inches of a friendly officer unit and is within range of an objective marker you control that is not within your deployment zone and has not already been expunged by your army. This action is completed at the end of your turn. If completed, that objective marker is said to have been expunged by your army. Roll 1d6 each time an objective marker is expunged by your army. On a 6, you gain a command point. At the end of the battle, score a number of victory points based on how many objective markers have been expunged by your army, as shown in the table below. Number of objective markers against victory points. So if you expunge 1, you get 2 VP. If you expunge 2, you get 5 VP. If you expunge 3, you get 10 VP. And if you expunge 4, you get 15. Now this is interesting. I quite like this one. It's got a couple of caveats, but firstly, let's just say, thank God, it's an action that allows you to do it all in your turn. I really thought when I first read this that GW were going to go, start it at the end of your movement phase, complete it at the next movement phase, and I thought, right, that's totally useful. The second caveat is you have to do it within 12 inches of a friendly officer. So that's kind of interesting. It means that your officers kind of need to be on the front lines, but at least it's not within 6 inches. 12 inches means you can easily get a unit of conscripts or a couple of units of infantry between you and your officer and the unit that is doing the action. So that's quite good. Because you don't want to lose officers, because one of the great things about Imperial Guard officers is that they're quite easy to hide and protect, and you don't want to be taking this objective just for your opponent to take assassinate and then they're able to pick up points and it kind of counteracts the points you're getting. 12 inches is okay. It's a little risky, but it's not too bad. The reason I like this one is because it's quite generous with the VP. I mean, 10 victory points for 3 objectives sponged is quite good. Expunged, I should say. And that should be doable in almost any situation. I mean, even on a 5 objective board, you should be able to get to 3 of them that aren't in your deployment zone. So they're just the 3 that go across the middle. Now bear in mind, you have to control the objective, but it doesn't have to be clear. One of the units that are probably going to be doing this every single time is going to be an infantry squad. Infantry squads are OBSEC. So you can happily move your unit onto the objective, take it off the enemy. They might have some unit there, like some sanguinary guard, something, doesn't matter, and you expunge it. And so if you get 2 of these, you get 5 VP, which is not great, but it's not too bad. But the moment you get 3, it's like, okay, that's quite nice. Now, we're not sure on how other secondaries might change, but if banners is still around, I would be taking this one over banners pretty much every single time. And the reason for that is that sometimes banners I get 10 points on. Often some banners I'll get 5 or 6 points on. It's not that good. But this one means that I can pretty consistently get 10 VP from it every single time. If I'm playing on a 6 objective game, then I'm definitely going to be taking this one. I think it will take a bit of work. You obviously can't move and advance and do it. You've got to be careful about that. But this is one that you can certainly get, and you've got 5 turns to do it. So it's not too bad at all. I think this is quite a strong one. I think this is the better one of the bunch. Now, taking a look at the 3rd objective, it's called Boots on the Ground. Firstly, love that name. And secondly, it's a battlefield supremacy objective, and it is a progressive objective. And at the end of each turn, excluding the first, now remember that, score 1 victory point for each table quarter that has 1 or more regiment infantry units from your army wholly within it, excluding character models and units that are within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield. You can also score 1 victory point if 1 or more units from your army equipped with a regimental standard are either within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield or wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. I like this one. This is a better version of Engage. Now, from what I understand, and I could be wrong here, from what I understand, Engage itself is changing to be a bit more like ROD or R&D or whatever you want to call it, which is where you have to be over 6 inches of the board edge to score it. This one doesn't mention that. So this one is easily, I would say, 3 victory points a turn, every turn, without fail. If you're running a pure infantry army, this is almost a no-brainer. And the crazy thing about this as well is that it's at the end of the turn, which means you can move with this thing. It's going to have a great time. Now, obviously, we don't know what might change in terms of new codexes and whatnot, but right now, this is really, really strong. I mean, hell, even if you just sit in your own table half for most of the game, you're going to get 10 VP, and any objective that you can get 10 VP on is absolutely fantastic. Now, obviously, the strongest part of this is the first bit, the different table quarters. But it shouldn't be underestimated that it is possible for you to get a couple of extra victory points a game by having a command squad with the regimental standard just plop into the middle of the board. So again, you can move that command squad forward into the middle of the board, and great, get a VP every single turn. Nice. Now, it does have to be a regiment infantry thing, so that's not too bad. I mean, just bear in mind you won't be able to use Crusaders for any cheeky shenanigans or anything like that. Weirdly, this kind of pairs nicely with some of the warlord traits like Implacable Advance, I believe it's what it's called, which is where you can just automatically advance 6 inches if you're near the warlord. So there's some interesting sort of combos here. I don't think you really need to worry about it. For me, this is just, if it's a pure infantry army or not a pure infantry army, this is fine. You have 1 unit sat in, your mortar pit sat in your table quarter, having a great time with the, scoring those victory points. You've got 1 in another table quarter, you move into another table quarter, you should be getting 3 victory points with this every single turn. You could get more than that. Now, bear in mind, I'm not 100% sure on this, but this should also work for Scions as well. I believe that their regiment trait, Militarum regiment trait is the same thing. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comment section below, guys. I could be wrong on this, but if this is available to Scions, this is really, really good for them. Just little 5-man squads, deep striking around here, there, and everywhere, having a great time, getting 4 victory points a turn. Your opponent can almost do nothing about it. This is an easy 10 victory points a game. Easy 10 victory points, and it's a 10 plus every single game, which should be. Unless you're running, obviously, a tank army or anything like that. But even like a mechanized army, you're going to be having a good time with this. So I really like this one. Boots on the ground, really, really strong. For me, I think this is one that I'm going to be taking nearly every single game. Now, last but certainly not least, we have Inflexible Command. This is another progressive objective, and this is a no mercy, no respite objective. And this one I really like. It's a little complicated, but if you build around it and you're just careful with it, you should be able to score really highly on this every single game. So, first part of it is score 2 victory points if every ASTRA MILITARUM infantry unit from your army is within 6 inches of a friendly officer unit. Second part is score 1 VP if every ASTRA MILITARUM vehicle unit from your army is within 12 inches of a friendly vehicle officer unit. And lastly, we've got for 1 VP if any enemy units were destroyed by an ASTRA MILITARUM unit from your army this turn while the ASTRA MILITARUM unit was being affected by an order or tank order. And there's a little bit at the end which makes this really interesting. For the purposes of this secondary objective, while an officer unit from your army is embarked within a transport model, that transport model is also considered to have the officer keyword. In addition, for the purpose of the secondary objective, while an infantry unit from your army is equipped with a Voxcaster, is within 24 inches of a friendly officer, it counts as being within 6 inches instead if the officer unit itself is within 1 inch of a friendly command squad or Tempesta command squad unit that is also equipped with a Voxcaster. Bear in mind, guys, that this cannot be scored in the first turn. So, that is really, really interesting, and I really like it. There's a couple of things that you've got to take into account, but I think you can score big on that every single turn, and here's why. In the last balanced data slate, we basically got 3 Voxcasters on all of our infantry squads. Now, obviously, you're going to have to be a bit more careful with conscripts, but if you're running lots and lots of infantry squads, which I suspect is the way we're going to be running our infantry now, because of the way the CP changes have happened, White Shields becomes a little bit less attractive. It's still okay, but it's a little bit less attractive. So now we're looking at having all our infantry squads within 24-inch range of officers. That becomes a lot more feasible. Likewise, 12-inch range of friendly vehicle officer unit, that's pretty doable. If you're running 3 or 4 tank commanders, if you include PASC, then those vehicles are going to be in range of themselves, so that's great. And if you've got a couple of Manticores, then now it makes even more sense to have one of your tank commanders equipped with Gatekeeper, doing some long-range fire support, taking advantage of that 72-inch range, and now being within 12-inch range of your couple of Manticores or your couple of Battlers, whatever you're taking that's got full payload. So it's actually quite achievable, this. I think you should be able to score at least 3 VP on this every single turn. I'd be really surprised if you scored any less than that. The final part of the objective is really good as well. Score 1 VP if a unit was destroyed by an ASTRA MILITARUM unit that was under the effect of an order, basically, order or tank order. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I can't think of a single unit in my army that doesn't get affected by an order. Maybe Chimeras, but if I'm running a pretty standard guard hybrid list, every unit in my army gets an order. Every single one of them. 3 tank commanders, they give themselves orders. If I've got all my infantry, they're all going to get orders being procced from the different, from the way that orders work now, that they go from one unit to the next and all that kind of good stuff. So I think that's an easy victory point every single time. I think being able to keep all your vehicle officers together and get an extra VP that way, that's going to work really, really well. So even if you're not quite within range of your officer of your infantry officer every single time, that should be an easy 2 victory points. Like I said, this should be maxable really easily. I mean, if you should be able to achieve this, no problem. So I really, really like this one. Now, there is a couple of things you've got to be aware of that make it tricky. Firstly, not every single unit gets a Voxcaster. For example, heavy weapon teams, mortar pits, they don't get Voxcasters. Now, you should be okay if you're taking your mortar pit with a platoon commander, but it's just something you need to be aware of. Also, a more likely unit is going to be, like I said, conscripts. Like, you're going to have to be really careful with how your conscripts and your officers close to each other, because you don't want to move your conscripts off and lose yourself to VP. So that's another thing I want to be careful of. Also, this is not just regiment infantry, this is all infantry. So if you're running anything like Bulgarins or Crusaders or anything like that, they're going to have to stick close to your officers. Now, that means that it does kind of shadow nerf certain units, which is frustrating. But another thing you've got to be careful of is that your officers potentially could be very much on the front lines, and again, that means that they're going to be at risk. So you've got to be really careful how you play this one, because if you're not careful about it, then you're going to find that not only are you losing officers, which means you're going to struggle to start scoring this, and your opponent is going to be gunning for your officers. It means that naturally your opponent is also going to be thinking, well, if he's going to have officers on the front lines, I need to be taking assassinate. And so there's a double doozy incentive for your opponent to pick up your officers, because they do it. Not only are they denying you victory points, they're scoring themselves victory points every single time. Think of it this way: if your opponent manages to get a sneaky jump unit over, or hell, maybe it's very unlikely snipers, but more than likely you're looking at some sort of targeted smite, you're looking at some kind of jump pack unit or something like that, then what's going to happen is your officer is going to die, your opponent's going to get 3 victory points, and you're going to lose 2. That's a 5-point swing. That's pretty heavy, because whilst you do score at the end of your turn, you might have a chance to move someone around, all that kind of good stuff. It's still, if you start losing too many officers, then you're not going to be able to cover everything, so it's tricky. Last sort of thing you're going to want to be aware of this is it is going to potentially influence and negatively impact on your manoeuvrability. You're kind of going to, yeah, with Vox Cats you should be okay, but there will be instances when you're kind of just moving around your army in like several different bricks, and so it could limit your manoeuvrability. However, at the end of the day, if you just don't really go past the midpoint of the board and you keep everyone together, and perhaps we're seeing the revival of the classic Morning Glory tactic, the 3 castle tactic, then this should become quite nice with that. So I like it. I think it's easily 2 to 3 to 4 victory points a turn. I think you should be killing stuff with orders. Keeping the vehicles together should be relatively easy. Your tanks commanders will be in range themselves most of the time. You just need one to sit back and guard and babysit any artillery you're looking at. But I think this is a strong one. So yeah, overall, I think all of these objectives, apart from the first one, are pretty good. Now, one thing that makes all of these objectives really, really strong is another big change which is coming in Warzone Nephilim, and that is the fact that you're no longer limited to just taking one faction secondary objective. That's right, boys. If you want to, you can take all 3 of your objectives as a faction-specific one. And considering I've just talked about the fact that we've got 3 strong secondaries here, that seems massive for the Guard. Absolutely massive. I can't see a reason why... Well, we've got to try it out, obviously. These things change with battlefield experience, but I can't see a reason why you wouldn't take all 3 of the good ones. Why you wouldn't take Special Orders, why you wouldn't take Boots on the Ground, why you wouldn't take Inflexible Command. They're all really good. And one of the best things about these objectives is that you almost don't have to interact with your opponent to max most of these. Your opponent can try and do some victory point denial and all that kind of stuff, but the one thing that Guard's kind of got going for it is we can take objectives well, and we kind of like being near our officers and our orders anyway. So for me, I don't know, this seems really, really strong. My experience with some of the other factions that got really good secondaries is that they can score them without having to interact with their opponent. One of my good mates, Matt Robertson, is a really, really good sister battle player. I would say he's the best sister battle player in the world. Recently joined the Art of War team, which is, well done for him, like absolutely fantastic. And he often builds his list, his sister's list, with a guaranteed like 97 victory points every single game, because he doesn't even interact with his opponent when it comes to his secondaries. He goes, I'm going to score 42 secondary points every single game, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And I'm kind of getting that vibe from these ones as well. We definitely have the ability to bubble wrap our officers. I've not lost an officer to assassinate or anything like that in probably 2 or 3 years. The exception to that is obviously when I've been tabled, but at that point the game is so far lost that it doesn't really matter. So yeah, I think these are really strong. We can bubble up our officers. We can happily take an objective a turn and expunge it. We can happily move multiple guard units into different table quarters. I mean, it just seems really, really strong. Now, whilst this means we're going to be scoring more VP, we're going to have to see what happens when it comes to other secondaries, because one of the big problems Guard has isn't necessarily scoring. We can do scoring quite well. This is certainly going to boost our scoring. But one of the big problems we have is that we bleed secondaries. Now, we haven't seen all of the changes yet. I'm still holding out hope that GW is going to change from the secondaries so that Guard don't bleed them quite as badly. If that happens, I actually think that we're going to be in a really strong position, which is fantastic. At the very least, even if they don't change that and we're still just stuck with bleeding secondaries, I feel like we're stronger now. I feel like we're stronger. And this feels like another sticking plaster, but a good one. And it's interesting. It almost feels like we've got a whole codex worth of change at this point without having to buy a codex, which is crazy to me. I don't know what you guys think about that, but it's crazy to me. Now, there is one thing that could derail all of this, and at the end of the day, boys, hope is the first step on the road to disappointment, but it depends on how the points changes come. we are going to be seeing lots of points changes apparently. And if we get any points increases, it's really going to basically undo all of this, which is, it's bad. It's really bad if that happens. If GW leave us alone, I think we'll be a bit stronger. If they give us a 5% points cut across the army, I think we'll be pretty strong. I think if we get a 10% points cut across the army, I think we're going to be really strong. So that's kind of interesting, but we'll have to see where it goes. Right now, I'm feeling good about the secondaries. I just need GW not to just fuck it up when it comes to the points increases. That's all I need them to do. Obviously, there's other things that we need to take into account, like command points. Those have changed significantly. We're only starting with 6, and if we want to take anything decent, we might be starting with even less than that. So that is tricky. But I'm going to cover command point changes in full in a separate video, so we can really go through how they're going to affect the Guard and how we should kind of build around it. But let's see what happens with that. Now, I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Which of these do you think works really, really well? Which of these are you most excited about? Which of these do you think are a bit shit, really? Put it down in the comment section below. Now, if you've enjoyed today's video, please consider giving it a like and a subscribe. And if you've really enjoyed today's video and you want to support the channel even further, then please consider becoming a channel Patreon supporter or channel member. It's thanks to my channel members and my Patreon supporters that my channel's been going from strength to strength recently. And it's also thanks to them that I'm able to not only look at these things in theory, but take them to the battlefield, take them to tournaments, and really give them a proper thrashing and a proper analysis. So, massive thank you to all of my channel supporters, massive thank you to all my patrons. You guys know how fantastic you are. And I just want to do a couple of shout outs to some of the latest channel supporters and Patreons. So I want to say a huge thank you to Chris Lawson, Arantanak, Navy Veteran, Nick D, Chris Wallace and Lincoln MV for becoming channel members. Just huge thank you to all of you guys. Thank you for doing your part. Would you like to know more? Click the join button down below and become a channel member today and do your part for Emperor and Imperium. I also want to say a huge thank you to the latest Patreon supporter. So huge thank you to Diesel Fox for not only becoming a Patreon supporter, but also subscribing at one of the highest tiers and becoming a Commissar. Massive thank you, Diesel Fox. I really appreciate it. And there's a few other top tier Patreon supporters I want to give a personal, heartfelt thank you to. So huge thank you to August Varney and John Stubbs for being subscribed at the Lord General level. Just absolutely fantastic, guys. You know how much I appreciate you, but I'm going to keep giving you these video shout outs because you really, honestly, it's amazing your support. So thank you for being so generous. And of course, I want to say a big thank you to Shooter McGavin and Swordfish Thumbs as well for also being subscribed at the Commissar level. Again, guys, just really appreciate all the support. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you. But we're going to leave today's video there, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. And of course, I'll see you guys next time.